it doesn't happen all at once. No one walks into your life wearing a sign that says, "I'm going to exhaust you." In fact, it usually starts with someone you genuinely enjoy being around, a close friend, a coworker, a family member, someone you've known for years. You meet them for coffee on a quiet Saturday afternoon. The conversation lasts an hour, maybe two. Nothing dramatic happens. Nobody yells, nobody argues, nobody insults anyone. You smile, you laugh, you hug goodbye. From the outside, it looks like a perfectly normal interaction, but then something strange happens. You get into your car, close the door, and just sit there. You don't feel angry. You don't feel sad. You don't even know what you're feeling. You just feel heavy, as if someone quietly unplugged the battery that had been powering you all day. You drive home in silence. The music feels annoying. Your phone buzzes, but you don't want to answer it. The simplest decisions suddenly feel exhausting. You tell yourself, maybe I just didn't sleep well. Maybe I've had a long week. Maybe I'm just tired. But then it happens again. The next week with the same person, and then again. Eventually, you begin noticing a pattern. Some people leave you feeling lighter than when you arrived. Others leave you feeling like you've been carrying an invisible weight for hours. Why? Most people answer that question with a simple phrase. They're toxic. Sometimes that's true, but here's the first plot twist. Not everyone who drains your energy is toxic, and not everyone who feels energizing is healthy. The real explanation is much more fascinating, because what you're experiencing isn't magic, it isn't intuition, and it certainly isn't weakness, it's biology. Long before humans built cities, long before we invented language sophisticated enough to describe emotions, our survival depended on one extraordinary ability: reading other people. Imagine standing around a campfire 20,000 years ago. You notice that one member of your group suddenly becomes tense. Their breathing changes, their eyes fix on something in the darkness. Without anyone saying a word, your own body begins preparing for danger. Your heart beats a little faster, your muscles tighten, your attention sharpens. Why? Because your brain learned that another person's emotional state could contain life-saving information. If they sensed danger, ignoring them could be fatal. Over thousands of generations, the human brain became remarkably efficient at detecting and responding to the emotions of others. Today, the predators have mostly disappeared, but the system remains. Only now, instead of reacting to a lion hiding in the grass, your brain reacts to a stressed coworker, an anxious partner, a constantly negative friend, a chronically angry family member. Without realizing it, your nervous system quietly asks one question: should I feel what they're feeling? And far more often than you think, the answer is yes. Psychologists call this emotional contagion. It's the tendency for emotions to spread from one person to another through subtle signals like facial expressions, tone of voice, posture, and even patterns of breathing. You've experienced it countless times. Walk into a room where everyone is laughing and smiling suddenly feels effortless. Walk into a room where tension hangs in the air and your shoulders tighten before anyone says a word. Your conscious mind hasn't made a decision. Your nervous system already has. But emotional contagion alone doesn't explain why some people leave you completely exhausted. After all, everyone has bad days. Everyone complains sometimes. Everyone needs support. So why does one difficult conversation barely affect you, while another leaves you mentally drained for the rest of the day? The answer isn't hidden in what they're saying. It's hidden in what your brain is forced to do while they're speaking. Imagine you're holding a glass of water. For 5 seconds, it feels weightless. Hold it for 5 minutes. Your arm begins to ache. Hold it for 5 hours. The glass hasn't become heavier, but your muscles have become exhausted. Psychological energy works in almost exactly the same way. Sometimes, another person's presence isn't emotionally overwhelming because their problems are unusually large. It's overwhelming because your brain never gets permission to put the glass down. Maybe they're constantly asking for reassurance. Maybe every conversation becomes a crisis. Maybe every solution you offer is immediately rejected. Maybe every interaction requires you to carefully manage their emotions before expressing your own. From the outside, you're just talking. inside your brain, something much more expensive is happening. Your attention is constantly monitoring, predicting, filtering, calming, adjusting, suppressing, listening, reassuring. And every one of those processes consumes mental energy. Neuroscientists often describe the brain as an organ that runs on limited cognitive resources. The more mental effort you spend regulating conversations, anticipating reactions, or carrying another person's emotional load, the fewer resources remain for your own thinking, decision-making, and emotional regulation, which leads to a second, far more unsettling realization that people who drain you the most are often not the loudest people in your life. They're the people whose emotions quietly become your responsibility. And the most exhausting part, most of the time, neither of you even realizes it's happening, which raises a deeper question. If emotional exhaustion isn't simply caused by difficult people, then why do some relationships slowly leave us feeling emotionally empty, while others somehow make us feel more alive every single time we leave them? The answer begins with a misconception almost everyone believes. We think relationships are built on time. Spend enough years with someone and the relationship becomes stronger. But that's not how your brain measures relationships at all. It measures something far more important. Safety. Not physical safety. Psychological safety. Every time you interact with another person, your brain is constantly asking questions you never consciously hear. Can I relax around this person? Can I say what I actually think? Will I be judged? Do I have to be careful with every word? Will I have to manage their emotions? Most of this happens below awareness, yet your nervous system is collecting data every second, and then, almost invisibly, it makes a decision. Should I conserve energy or spend it? That's the second plot twist. Some people don't drain your energy because they're negative. They drain your energy because your brain never feels safe enough to stop working. Think about someone you completely trust. Maybe it's an old friend, a sibling, a partner, someone who accepts awkward silences, someone who doesn't need you to impress them. You can sit together for an hour, barely speaking, and somehow you leave feeling lighter. Now think about someone else. The conversation feels like walking through a room filled with fragile glass. Every sentence is edited before you say it. You replay your words while they're still talking. You wonder whether they misunderstood you. You carefully soften your opinions. You apologize even when you haven't done anything wrong. From the outside, both conversations lasted an hour. Inside your brain, one felt like rest, the other felt like work. Researchers studying social baseline theory have proposed something fascinating. The human brain evolved, expecting supportive relationships to reduce the cost of dealing with the world. In other words, healthy relationships don't simply make life happier. They literally reduce how much work your brain believes it has to do. When you genuinely trust someone, your brain unconsciously treats them as part of your support system. Challenges appear more manageable. Stress feels less overwhelming. Even physical effort can seem easier when you believe someone is beside you. Now reverse that. Imagine being around someone unpredictable. One day they're warm. The next they're distant. One small comment changes their mood. You never know which version of them you'll meet. Your brain hates unpredictability. Because unpredictability destroys one thing it values above almost everything else: prediction. Remember the videos we've explored before. Your brain is fundamentally a prediction machine. It constantly tries to reduce uncertainty when it can't predict another person's reactions. It compensates by paying even closer attention. Every facial expression becomes a clue. Every pause becomes suspicious. Every message without punctuation suddenly feels loaded with meaning. Without realizing it, you've become a full-time emotional detective, and detectives don't rest. Here's something remarkable. Studies on emotional regulation consistently show that suppressing your own emotions requires measurable mental effort. Now imagine doing that dozens of times during a single conversation. You want to disagree, but you smile instead. You feel hurt, but you say, "It's fine." You want to leave, but you stay because you don't want to disappoint them. Each individual moment feels insignificant. Together, they become exhausting. Not because expressing yourself is difficult, because hiding yourself is. And that's where another plot twist appears. Sometimes the person draining your energy isn't asking for anything. You're volunteering. You become the therapist, the peacemaker, the fixer, the one who always understands, the one who always listens, the one who remembers birthdays, checks in first, says sorry first, makes peace first. Gradually, the relationship develops an invisible imbalance. One person releases emotional weight, the other carries it. At first, carrying it feels meaningful. It feels like kindness, compassion, love, but over time, something subtle changes. Compassion without boundaries slowly turns into emotional labor. Psychologists sometimes use the term co-rumination to describe relationships where people repeatedly dwell on problems together without moving towards solutions. While these conversations can increase feelings of closeness, research also suggests they can amplify stress and anxiety over time. Notice the difference. Supporting someone is healthy. Living inside someone else's emotional world is not. One creates connection. The other quietly consumes your emotional resources. Then one day, you notice something that doesn't make sense. You're not physically tired. You slept 8 hours. You ate well. Nothing particularly stressful happened. Yet after spending time with one specific person, you feel as though you've worked an entire day. That's because emotional exhaustion isn't measured by how much you do. It's measured by how much of yourself your brain believes it has to protect. Which leads to perhaps the most surprising question of all. If some relationships quietly teach your nervous system to stay on high alert, what does a relationship look like when your brain finally realizes it no longer has to defend itself? What does a relationship look like when your brain finally realizes it no longer has to defend itself? Oddly enough, it often feels almost boring. There are no emotional roller coasters, no constant guessing games, no dramatic highs followed by devastating lows, no walking on eggshells, no replaying conversations in your head at 2 in the morning. At first, many people mistake this feeling for a lack of excitement, but your nervous system recognizes it for what it truly is: peace. And here's the final plot twist. The people who give you energy aren't necessarily giving you anything at all. They're simply not forcing your brain to spend energy protecting itself. Think about the people who leave you feeling calm. You don't have to rehearse your sentences before speaking. You don't have to hide parts of your personality. You don't constantly wonder what they're thinking. You don't feel responsible for fixing every emotion they experience. Around them, you breathe differently. Your shoulders relax. Silence doesn't feel awkward. You laugh without calculating whether it was too loud. You disagree without fearing rejection. For the first time all day, your brain stops scanning for danger. That matters more than most people realize, because the brain is incredibly expensive to run. Although it represents only about 2% of your body's weight, it consumes roughly 20% of your resting energy. Every unnecessary prediction, every emotional calculation, every attempt to manage someone else's reactions comes with a cost. Most of us never notice that cost because it isn't paid all at once. It's paid conversation by conversation, text message by text message, small compromise by small compromise, until one day you wake up feeling emotionally exhausted, without remembering exactly when the exhaustion began. This is why emotional boundaries are often misunderstood. People imagine boundaries as walls, as distance, as saying no more often. Sometimes they are, but healthy boundaries are something much simpler. They allow your nervous system to distinguish between your emotions and someone else's emotions. Imagine standing beside someone holding a heavy backpack. Compassion means recognizing that the backpack is heavy. Kindness means helping them carry it for a while. But if you quietly take the backpack home every night, eventually you'll forget it was never yours to begin with. That's what emotional over-identification feels like. You absorb another person's anxiety until it becomes your own. You absorb their anger, their fear, their urgency, their chaos. Not because you're weak, often because you're deeply empathetic. Empathy is a remarkable human ability. It allows us to connect, comfort, and understand one another. But empathy without boundaries slowly transforms into emotional absorption. And emotional absorption always has a price. Here's something fascinating. Research on emotional regulation suggests that people who can acknowledge another person's emotions without immediately taking responsibility for fixing them tend to experience less emotional burnout while maintaining healthier relationships. Think about that for a moment. You don't have to become emotionally numb. You don't have to stop caring. You simply have to remember one truth. Understanding someone's pain is not the same as carrying it. That realization changes everything. Because suddenly, you're free to ask a different question. Instead of, how do I stop letting people drain my energy? You begin asking, why does my brain believe it's responsible for carrying energy that doesn't belong to me? Those are completely different problems. One blames other people. The other creates awareness, and awareness creates choice. Now think back to the coffee shop where this story began. The same friend is sitting across from you. The same stories, the same worries, the same conversation. Nothing about them has changed, but something inside you has. This time, you listen with compassion, not obligation. You care, but you don't confuse caring with carrying. You offer support, but you no longer believe it's your job to rescue every difficult emotion. When the conversation ends, you walk outside, take a deep breath, and notice something surprising. You're still tired, but you're not empty, because your energy was never stolen. It was gradually spent on emotional work your brain believed it had to perform. And now, for the first time, it knows it can put that invisible weight down. Perhaps that's the greatest misunderstanding about emotionally draining people. They aren't always trying to take your energy. Sometimes, your own brain is giving it away, not out of weakness, but because it evolved to protect relationships, preserve belonging, and reduce conflict. Thousands of years ago, that instinct helped humans survive. Today, it can quietly convince you that keeping everyone else emotionally comfortable is more important than protecting your own peace. But peace isn't selfish. It's what allows your nervous system to recover, to think clearly, to love without resentment, to give without becoming depleted. So the next time you leave a conversation feeling strangely exhausted, pause before assuming something is wrong with you. Ask yourself one simple question. Was I sharing this moment with someone, or was I carrying it for them? Because that single question reveals the difference between connection and emotional overextension. The people who truly belong in your life won't require you to shrink yourself so they can feel whole. They won't ask your nervous system to stay on constant alert. Instead, they'll give your mind something it has been searching for all along. Not endless excitement, not perfect agreement, but something far more valuable. A place where your brain finally realizes it is safe enough to rest.